WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It's been a little while since we've had this guy on. It's been kind of a quiet winter around here, but no winter of discontent in Montoursville, Pennsylvania, where Cooperstown has a new Hall of Famer. No, it's not Mike Mussina. It's his brother Mark, who actually likes coming on the program and busting up with me and talking about old Tesla concerts and Van Halen pictures and whatnot, and has been my kemosabe for going on a quarter of a century. You and I have known each other now, Mark Mussina, and your brother's in the Hall of Fame. And I must say, you got me. It got a little dusty in the room when I was reading your account of your brother's Hall of Fame thing. I remember reading it in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in a hotel room after seeing Bob Seger, and I thought, you know what? Moose got it right. Good job to you, Mark Mussina, and happy times for your family, and hoping you have a very special day up in Cooperstown in July, man.
It's been a lot of fun. Obviously we're looking forward to it, and it has really been 8 votes to the good has really made it a fun winter. So, we're excited. There's been a lot of people that have come out of the woodwork that I've gotten a lot of congratulations, and I'm not really sure what I did, but it's been fun. Like, the whole family's obviously thrilled, and we're looking forward to it.
Well, I mean, I grew up with your family, and watching you come down here and sit behind home plate and have all of your ritualistic weirdness, which I thought you encapsulated very, very well in the piece that I shared and will share again. And I guess there's a part of it for other people, and Mariano Rivera, that he was sitting there with his family, and it's all in HD, and it wasn't even done that way in the Ken Griffey era, right? Or, 15 years ago. I don't know where Cal was the minute he found out or whatever, and whether news crews stake out your place as they do to 14-year-olds now who sign letter of intents to Alabama or whatever. I think the world has changed. But for your brother to sort of be in between gym appointments and getting a phone call, I found that to be very quintessential Mike.
Well, it was interesting, too, because I'd wondered, because pretty much everyone else was a foregone conclusion. The two things going in that were the debate was Mike going to get in, and was Mariano going to be unanimous? So it was, I don't know if they didn't, and the Hall of Fame had talked to Mike like 3 weeks before, and they kind of went over the process of, if you get in, like, you're going to have to be in New York the next day, and then they kind of, so the logistics had already.
Was this the first time they ever went through that with him?
Yes. Yes.
So he knew it was kind of like half the knock on the door a little bit.
Well, everyone, just from the projections and the ones that have released, we knew he was going to be a couple votes either to the good or to the bad. So I don't know. Maybe it was discussed then. Do you want to send a news crew in case you end up 5 votes short, or is it better left alone? And like you said, he had basketball practice anyway, so he was literally 5 minutes off the court when the call came in. So he got the call standing in the lobby of the high school between boys' practice and girls' practice, and or maybe the girls had a game that night. I don't know, but they had just gotten off the floor. So. So, that's how it turned out.
Well, the NFL's made much more theatrics about this, with this gigantic David Baker, big man, coming and knocking on your door with a camera and, kind of Ed McMahon, right? Literally, right?
Yeah, and it's different because we all remember there's guys that, Louis Oliver is one of the first ones I remember, but you see these guys on draft day that just slide and slide and slide, and you can see the disappointment in their face, but they're going to get picked sooner or later. And so with Mike's, it was either you're going to get in or you're going to be out, and so maybe that's why they didn't send a camera. I don't know, but either way, he was not. There was no film crew in Montoursville.
Look, man, you wrote at length about this from your own personal experience, and I think with great wit and wisdom through all of this is, we're all pushing 50 now, and the things that we did and the things that were important. And
Wait. You already pushed 50, didn't you? Isn't that past tense for you?
Yes, you're not 50 yet.
I'm pushing 50. You've pushed it.
You're the younger brother. I keep forgetting, and you keep reminding me of that as well. But I think as we get older, and all the pizza we ate, and the girls we chased, and the beer we drank, and the fun we had, and the things we did, and all that stuff, I think all along If Todd Froworth were still with us, he would have said at that point in the journey, back when I met you, your brother had Hall of Fame stuff, right? Like, we all knew that. By the way, I was wondering how he got into Stanford. Now we all know, but this is my little side joke. You can let him know that I kicked him on that. I don't think your parents had that sort of wealth at that point to buy him. His arm bought him into Stanford.
His arm helped a little.
Yeah, arm helped a little bit. They didn't have to sneak him in the back door. But all these years later, and the notion that it's a promise fulfilled, right? Like, it was one of those things that was always sort of thought about or talked about in the 20-win seasons, and you were adding up the numbers, and you always knew it was going to be a little dicey, that he might get in, that he probably should get in, that you could make a case for him to get in, but you never really know that it was going to happen. And I know Moose to be a relatively humble dude about all of that stuff in general, about not even going on much of the media and doing any beauty tour. There's not going to be any autograph show afterward, I'm guessing, just because it's his personality. But part of it also was you guys really didn't know, did you? It's different. Like, I know the Shillings real well, and whatever you believe or don't believe, I think they go to bed every night believing he's not getting in. Like Pete Rose really believes he's not getting in. Your brother was one of those really weird cases where Blyleven, Sutton, a bunch of guys spent a lot of nights wondering. My cousin, Luis was not, in any way a first, kind of you look back, you wonder how he got in to some degree other than the era and the player. But I don't know that your brother ever really, really, really had the speech ready and all that stuff, because it felt like a foregone conclusion to me, but probably not to you guys, really, right?
Well, no, and because of the era that he played in with the other pitchers that he was up against, and when he's going on the ballots early, and you're going when Tom Glavine's on the ballot against you, and when Randy Johnson's on the ballot, when Pedro Martinez is on the ballot, and you start, when you don't look deeply into the resume, when you just look quickly and you say, Tom Glavine has 2 Cy Youngs and 5 20-win seasons, and Randy Johnson was who Randy Johnson was, and Pedro Martinez was the best pitcher in baseball for, 5 years, or he may be the best pitcher ever for that 5-year span or whatever it was. So I can see how when you're voting that, and you say, well, how do I vote for Pedro Martinez and Mike Mussina on the same ballot because Pedro was better? And how do I vote for Randy Johnson and Mike Mussina on the same ballot because Randy Johnson? But kind of once those guys got away, and, as it got to even last year and into this year, and I said, if you're not going to put Mike in, and if you're not going to put Schilling in, and I knew Mike was a little ahead of Schilling in the votes, but if you're not going to put these guys in, when are you ever going to put another starting pitcher in again? Are you waiting? Does Sabathia get in and Mike doesn't? Now are we waiting for guys like Justin Verlander? Are we waiting for Clayton Kershaw's? It really was. Because with most Hall of Fame careers, at least the guys that are first ballots, there's a splash. There was a time that they were the best in the game for, even if it was a short period, but they were the best there was. And Mike never was the best in the game, but he was really, really good for 18 years. And it takes a while. That's Don Sutton falls into that, as you mentioned. Burt Blyleven kind of falls into that. That there's a difference, when you're trying to define greatness. Is greatness the best in the world for one album, or is it putting out, 8 good albums over 18 years that keeps you in the spotlight for a long time?
Well, whatever Styx did, it's not getting them in, so I don't know, right?
Styx, it doesn't. I think weren't they the first band to have like 4 platinum albums or something like that?
They had some crazy benchmark on sales. I don't know what gets you into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame anymore. And when it comes to the Baseball Hall of Fame, clearly numbers don't mean anything. Perception of guilt or innocence in regard to PEDs, benchmark numbers that Palmeiro and people like that have fallen long off the ballot and will be forgotten about unless anyone comes back in another lifetime and wants to make a case for their character, because it really is a character issue now on a lot of these guys in a game where character integrity, throwing at guys' heads, unwritten rule. I mean, all the weirdness of all of it, some of it really does come back to a popularity contest. And your brother wasn't all that popular with guys outside of me. A lot of people thought your brother was arrogant and difficult, and like all that stuff, and that's a benchmark. And Schilling is right wing and crazy and all, and the bloody sock, and whether it's true or not, and all of the things that work against whomever in the voting. There is no criteria, right? I mean, like, there's no hard and fast criteria other than, well, I like him this year, not last year. And that's the weirdest part for me, and it's always been the weirdest part, going back to driving around with Phil Jackman in the 1980s. And he explained to me something that made no sense at all. It was kind of like the Tooth Fairy or Christmas. He would say, and like Bill Conlon, who's now, died in shame and had I read about that the other day in the Philadelphia. I didn't even know what. Do you know about the Bill Conlon scandal? Do you know that, or do you know?
I didn't even know he was dead. No,
dude. Do you know who I'm talking about, right? Do you know who he is?
I remember Bill Conlon. He was on the sports reporters all the time.
Okay, right. Crusty old Philadelphia guy, right? He was the original guy that you never vote for anybody the first year, not even Babe Ruth, because no one does. He was a miserable old prick, right? Turned out, Google him and Google the last days of child molestation. He was an original Me Tooer with children and bad things, disgraced in 2014. I never even wrote about it. But I remember him being the original, nasty guy on national media to say no one should ever get a first vote and all this stuff. And Jackman would explain it to me when we would drive to the games. You never vote for the guy in the first year. It's a rule. I'm like, who made that stupid rule?
Yeah, and it's
like, so
my kids are asking me that.
Well, that was all. Who made it? A bunch of guys like Bill Conlon. And I never understood that, and I never have understood how you could give me a ballot one year that said Mike Mussina in a little box, and one year I wouldn't check it in 2000 and let's say 16 or 18, and then this year I would. Like, I don't. That's never made any sense to me, Mark. And I guess it never will, and I've been talking about it most of my lifetime, and it's still employed because there still were a lot of guys that didn't like your brother 2 years ago, and all of a sudden, he's good now. He's made it through purgatory, or it's absurd. And like a guy like Halliday died in the midst of all of this, right? Like I just, it's insane. Either put the guy in or don't put him in. Let's move on. That's how I feel about it.
Well, like an Edgar Martinez, who for 9 years couldn't get in.
Now, there's a guy that never believed he was getting in, right? Like, he went to bed every night and never believed he was going to be a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah, probably for a while.
Sure.
And it's interesting, like Mike's first year, we got 20%, or 19, or 21, or something like that. And, I'm doing the calculations. It's like, all right, if he increases a little, we'll see how he increases, because there have been guys that have made the runs, and Edgar's one of them. But yeah, to your point, how does Edgar for 9 years never get close, or get reasonably close, and then his last year he's a slam dunk? So I think there are perceptions. The big question, and you touched on it earlier, as the future goes on, the guys who dominated the era of baseball, the kind of like the prime of our baseball life, Clemens, Bonds, Palmeiro, guys like that. What happens to them? What happens to A-Rod? I mean, can we really have a Hall of Fame that doesn't have Clemens, Bonds, and A-Rod?
And Rose. Put Rose in there, too. Throw him in.
Well, Rose is a different animal. But if
he had 4,200 hits.
No, but he's not out for PEDs. He's out for a different reason. He should be in, too. But if
okay, I made you say it. That's fair enough. I just wanted you to say it.
If Clemens, Bonds, and A-Rod all get in, which they should, then you have to put Palmeiro in because he's got 500 home runs and 3,000 hits. So now I know Palmeiro's fallen off the ballot, and Sammy Sosa. Like, these guys were megastars of this era, and they were the best players in the game. So I understand that it's tainted. I understand, but it is the Hall of Fame is a history museum of baseball, and for that era of baseball, whatever you want to say about Lance Armstrong, everybody was doping, and Lance was still the best in the world. So whatever asterisk you want to put by him or black mark you want to put by his name, for the doping era of cycling, Lance was the best. And for the PED era of baseball, that these guys were the best. And I know you'll always have the argument, well, what if the other guys did, and what if the other guys didn't?
But part of this, dude, is an honor, right? Like, no one wants to see Barry Bonds come up and be honored at the end of all of this. So, it's one thing for A-Rod to marry J-Lo and whatever Jose Canseco has to say about that in the aftermath or thereabouts. Moose. But I would just say there is a part where I don't want Donald Trump honored for anything because he's a dishonorable, despicable human being. I don't like liars. I don't like cheats. I don't like louses. I don't like traitors. I don't like cheaters. I don't like liars who cheat and cheaters who lie. I don't like that 23 years later, Brady Anderson still runs around with an Oriole badge on and swears that he was the clean one. You know what I mean? Out of everybody, he was the clean one. So I don't like any of it, and I call BS on it, and it's what I've done for 3 decades. So I would have a problem if Barry Bonds was standing next to your brother, because I feel one way about your brother and I feel another way about Barry Bonds. And I feel another way about Pete Rose, by the way, too. So, I can make a different thing about Pete Rose, but and he sort of took the deal back in the day, right? He took the deal that he was going to be banned for life. Life is life, I guess. And he's made a mockery of the whole thing. And I think in the end, they all would if there were money at stake that they needed. You know what I mean?
Well, this is my stance on Rose, and I'm sure I've given you this before. I think Rose took the ban, and Bart Giamatti said, sit out, keep your nose clean, and when you apply, I'll reinstate you. I think that was the unwritten rule. Rose accepted the ban, and then Bart Giamatti died. And I think that's where everything came off the rails back then, because it was when it happened, I think it was a lifetime ban, but he could apply for reinstatement after a year. And Bart Giamatti didn't live another year. And that's
dude, Pete got 4,200 hits without batting gloves and spitting and throwing and cussing and pissing off everyone and running over Ray Fosse and all the a despicable, heinous human being by any stretch of the imagination, like literally with wives, with children, with bets, with bettors, with horse people, and God, Pete's terrible. Pete's a terrible human being. But Pete got 4,200 hits
4,200
on the up and up, and that's what puts you in the Hall of Fame, not shooting up with needles and clear and running around with Balco and, taking shots in your ass in the shower to help you out and then lying about it and covering it up and breaking the law and then lying to everybody over and over and over again and cashing $100 million of fan money and then still lying about it 25. To me, no vote for you, for me. But, I don't get a vote because I'm a guy with honor and integrity. They threw me out years ago, dude. Yeah, they threw me out for telling the truth a long time ago. Mark Mussina here, his brother is a Hall of Famer. And, it's great to say that. What does it mean for your family and for your brother and your nieces and nephews and just in general? Like, I see you guys as very ho-hum about a lot of this, which is why you're still in Montoursville, Pennsylvania, not living at the top of the Four Seasons, right?
Well, first of all, the best news of it that it happened this year is, both my parents are 75 years old, and both of them are still in good health. But, my dad had a slight bout with cancer, and my aunt had breast cancer, and she's 72. And at that age, they're all doing well, but at that age, you also never know. And
that's awesome.
We're just happy that
there you go.
They were allowed. And one of his Little League coaches, who literally was in poor health, he died early February. So he was alive long enough to know that Mike got in. Wow. And that's one of the factors that comes into this. The other is just kind of because we knew he was close. It'd be one thing if you're a guy who never got any love and you were at 15% of the vote or 25% of the vote or whatever. But once we saw that last year he was in the 60-some percent, now it's like he's either got to get in or it's going to be heartbreaking.
Nobody was booking a trip to Disney World in July this year. Everybody was kind of hanging on a little bit.
Yeah. And we knew once it got there, and I'm telling my kids, like, historically, as it trends.
How old are your kids now, and how old's Moose's kids?
I have a junior in high school, a freshman in high school, and a sixth grader.
Wow.
Mike has a sophomore in college and a sophomore in high school.
Wow. Time flies, right?
Man.
Well, watching Ryan Ripken run around and Palmero's little kid. Remember Palmero's little kid with the wiffle
ain't
bat?
Little anymore.
I know, and the funny, Palmero's little kid behind home plate with the wiffle bat. Remember him?
Oh yeah. I remember.
That's back when people used to go to the games, Moose. It's different now.
My favorite Palmero kid story is he loved Ken Griffey Jr.
I remember that. He wore Seattle stuff.
He wore Seattle stuff all the time. And Griffey Jr. flew out to center field. Patrick Palmero was probably about 4 at the time. He flew out deep somewhere, and someone caught it on the track, and he started crying. And, of course, the crowd's cheering because it's in Camden Yards. And he starts crying, and he starts yelling, "Those stupid Orioles!" And his mom is, like, laughing, doesn't know what to do. And Patrick is furious because Griffey just flew out. But, yeah, now he's not little anymore.
I run into him. I'm going to remind him of that because I hadn't thought of that in 25 years, but I absolutely remember him always wearing Ken Griffey when he was 4 years old. That's what he wore. Yep. It was like my dad could not talk me out of Dan Pastorini. Literally. My dad could not talk me out of Oiler Blue. And the same way your parents probably should have tried to talk you out of the Dallas Cowboys, but didn't.
Well, I'll tell you another funny one. My nephew, who's now a sophomore in high school, when Mike, at the very end of Mike's career, he's just playing video games, and he's playing – MLB Online and whatever it is and the best hitter at that time on the video game was David Ortiz. So my 4-year-old nephew's favorite player was David Ortiz because on this video game you couldn't get him out. And so Mike's a Yankee, and this kid wants Red Sox clothes. So they're like, well, he's 4, what do we care? So he shows up at Yankee Stadium one day with Red Sox jersey, Red Sox shorts, and he goes into the clubhouse after the game, and he's walking around, and Johnny Damon goes up to him and says, "Is that your kid?" And he's like, "Yeah," and he gave him the story, and he walks up to my nephew and says, "Hey, nice thread." So, it is fun. And I remember when Mike's little kids were like, "When does Dad come home?" And they said, as soon as the Yankees lose in the playoffs. So I remember when they were really little, them rooting against the Yankees in the playoffs because that's all they understood. When the Yankees lost, Dad got to come home. So it is.
My dad's 100th birthday was last week. And and then crazily, and I haven't told anybody this. My paternal father passed on Sunday, same week, within the last 5 days. So it's been a crazy week for me, and for looking through old baseball pictures, and you've seen those pictures in 1972 in Venezuela on a mule wearing an Oriole shirt. You know what I mean? So I always had an Oriole shirt when I was little, and the baseball cards and that I collected and all that stuff, and obviously the memories with your brother. I mean, when your brother went in, it made people like me and everyone around you and your brother during that era remember that era and remember all the little Patrick Palmero stories we had, or all the Baja Beach Club or Balls or Hooters or any of the places that existed back then that don't exist now, or old Van Halen and Bon Jovi concerts and Def Leppard concerts we went to. But, it is nice. It's going to be a nice day on the Hill. Any, sort of predictive things about your brother in this process, or your involvement, his involvement, crying, notes, things said, honoring Todd Froworth and people like him? What do you expect out of your brother in this thing?
That's a good question. I don't know, to be honest with you. Someone just asked me the other day, and I said I haven't offered help with speech writing yet because their basketball season just came to an end. They lost in the playoffs a week ago, Friday, and so
I can hear him saying to you right now, "I'm not thinking about that right now." That's what he would say, right? It's literally just like that.
But I don't know, and I've thought about what he could say and what he should say, and maybe what these are options of things to say, and I don't know if you want to say them or not. And so I don't know. I
hope he gives me a shout out, but I'm not expecting that.
I would suspect it won't be Ray Lewis-esque, but it'll be fun.
So you're saying he's not going to take the wraparound mic and go full on?
I don't think he's going to go
Rex Kwando,
Baptist preacher on. I don't think that's going to happen. No. But I think the coolest part for us back here is for all the kids, and Mike's coached Little League for years now, and he's coached high school basketball now, going on like his 7th year or whatever.
Every kid in Montoursville knows him, literally knows him, right?
But now they know, like, everyone's like, he was good, and the parents tell me he was good. but now it's just this kind of reflection of that he was that good. And to me, that is a cool thing. That everyone, like, they know he's a pitcher and they know he played in the major leagues. And there's a picture of him in the uniform, in the lobby and stuff. But now it just kind of puts it in a new level. And just fortunately where we live, that being 3 hours from Cooperstown, that I would suspect that there is going to be a large contingent of our town that's going to head up.
Well, I hope at some point he decides to come on and spend 20 minutes with me catching up. But here's your homework. So you have to get a human being on my show between now and the induction date. And you have two people. You got to get one of these two people on. You ready? Okay?
I'm ready.
Your brother's one of them. Okay? So you either have to get him or Tom O'Malley. Okay? So that's your homework.
Tom the other day.
Yeah, so you either have to get your... Now, listen, if you get your brother and Tom O'Malley on, I buy the root beer for you the night of Tesla. How about that?
Nice.
All right?
Wow. How can I turn that down?
I mean, you can even go with an exotic... When you want an exotic beverage, what do? You step it up to like a Shirley Temple?
You know what's funny?
I'm not being mean to you, but you're a famous teetotaler. You don't drink ever. Your brother and I used to drink beer, and you would drink like ginger ale. It was cool, and we never like gave you a hard. I mean, I'm not, me. I'm not a hard time guy like that. But I often wonder, like, what do you do to step it up? Like, if you're a coffee drinker, you get a latte, right? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't like coffee either. Now I've actually downgraded to unsweetened iced tea. That's kind of, as I'm getting old, I'm trying to stay healthier. I've gone. When my beverage of choice usually when I go out is unsweetened iced tea. But there was a bar in Baltimore that some friends of ours used to go to, and once you've been there enough, you know the bartender. When I would come in and sit down, he would make a Shirley Temple and just sit it in front of me and wouldn't even ask. So
extra cherries. How many cherries in there? Because that would always tell you how much they like you.
They are delicious. I don't remember. Probably two, but
okay.
Shirley Temples are delicious. I would say that.
I've never met a Shirley Temple I wouldn't consume. They are delicious, yes.
I know it's not very masculine for a 47-year-old guy to say that. That and Shamrock Shakes, very underrated.
Yeah, I've seen you tweet about that. But, in the big city now, Moose, we have these machines with all the flavors. And if you just get a cherry ginger ale, don't tell anyone. It's kind of like a Shirley Temple, okay?
But it's not.
But it's not.
It might be, but it's not.
But it's not. Not completely. It's not 7-uppy. He is Mark Mussina. He wrote a wonderful homage to his brother that I'll be sharing. That was out in January, and it took me... I tried to track you down in the aftermath, and I know you did some media, and some people took some shots at me. They're like, man, you don't even know Moose's brother. Like, he doesn't even call you anymore. He calls your competitors. But that's cool, because I figured, by the time I would get to you, we'd be able to talk about, Ravens and stuff like that. We didn't even do that. So I'll call you back sometime around the draft. Your homework is either get Mike Mussina, who used to like me and do the show regularly. Tell your brother, okay? Here's the best shot I have of getting your brother on, and I do want Tom O'Malley either way. But I have a tape of your brother and I doing our first radio together. This was when the show wasn't mine. It was still Kenny Albert's show. We played quarters together on the air into Dixie Cups at the old WITH studios that were wretched. And your brother wasn't even like a star yet. He was just coming up. It was... right as Camden Yards was getting built, 91, 92, in that era. And if he doesn't do radio with me, I will air it until he hears about it. And he doesn't want to hear about it. So tell him I've got tapes, okay? Tell him it's like a Stormy Daniels type of thing.
So it's blackmail. That's what I'll say. I'll open with it's a Stormy Daniels type thing.
It's bird mail. But I do want O'Malley on, and honestly, and you can tell your brother this, and I mean this from the heart. I don't care if he comes on or not. Like, I'd love for him to come on, but if he comes on, I just want it to be really good. So tell him to bring his A game when he comes on. Tell him to be rested and funny and caffeinated and witty, and tell him to act Hall of Fame-ish if he comes on. You know what I mean?
I'll say not only come on, but you're under pressure.
Just let him know I'm going to have fun with him, and it's going to be like you and I talking. You know what I mean? Like a little bit. Like I'm going to make some Stanford jokes and stuff like that. That's all.
I get it.
All right. That's it. That's your homework. Either he's going to hear quarters, or you're going to get me Tom O'Malley, or something good's going to happen. And hopefully, by the way, the Cowboys turned out to be popular. The players all want to play for the Cowboys. Did you see that story?
No.
Robert Klemko Sports Illustrated just came out this week. He asked the agents where flat world where they would send their player to play, and the Cowboys won the battle because Jerry treats the players the best. And I remember you telling me that about the Yankees. Like, being a Yankee was just different because, like, George fixed things, right? Literally.
Yeah, it was certainly a I remember we went after Mike retired in the year we went back. He was they have a banquet the night before opening day, and it's a big fundraiser, and it's however many $1 million a plate, whatever it is. And Mike was getting an award, and so we showed up and we tried to check into the hotel, and they said, "Oh, sorry, your room's not ready yet." So we're milling around in the lobby, and one of the executives from the Yankees came up, and this is after he retired. And she said, why are you guys hanging out in the lobby? And we said, because they told us our room's not ready. And she just calmly looked at us and said, wait right here. And she went over to the desk. She came back, and like 3 minutes later, she said, your room's ready now. So it was, they really do, they go out of their way to take care.
And I guess my point was you're a Cowboy fan, and I read this, and I thought this is because I know Klemko, I know the people, he's talking to real agents. This isn't, that if you were an agent and you just wanted to steer the player to the best place to play football, that they would steer them to the Cowboys. And that's an interesting take from an agent because I wouldn't necessarily think that way.
Yeah, but one of the debates as being a Cowboy fan, and you see with New England, one of the arguments is that a great way to go out in sports? And there's one thing to take care of your guys, but then there's another thing to be too attached to guys. Like, should Jason Garrett have kept his job this long? Are they too attached to Dak Prescott? Are they convinced that he's the guy, or does he have to prove that he's the guy? Because you see a place like New England that will just, as soon as they think you're done, they'll get rid of you, and it works. So it's,
and they also lowball you, too. I mean, the New England part of it, by the way, Klemko wrote a great piece back in 2016 about Chris Long. And Belichick literally, here's his drop the mic with you. He will call the agent and he will say, he'll say to you, Mark, you're representing Mike. Mike's a 34-year-old, pitcher in the Hall of Very Good. He might be a Hall of Famer. He might have 3 years left on tread, and I know you want him to throw a knuckleball. And I would then say to you, I'm Bill Belichick, I'd say, Mark, does Mike want to win a Super Bowl or does he not? And that's that. That's the end. Here's the deal. Do you want to win if you want to win a Super Bowl, you come play for me. If you want to get paid, go sign with the Dolphins. We'll play you twice a year. You know what I mean? Like, literally, that's the out card there. And I think, the Yankees would hold that card with Machado or Bryce Harper if they wanted it, right? Or the Dodgers. They didn't want that card. The Cubs. I mean, baseball. By the way, we can get into real baseball. We've done enough. Next time we get together, we'll talk about all that stuff because I know you got to go and you got kids and ball and all that. Give your brother my best and your family. I'm tickled for you, and it was a thrill for me. Honestly, it was a thrill for me.
All right, man. We'll do it again.
Mark Mussina, there he goes, my dear friend. It's been going on for a long time, 25 years in. It's never goodbye. It's see you later with him, and he owes me his brother or Tom O'Malley. And if you don't know Tom O'Malley, you should Google Thomas Patrick O'Malley, who is a very, very interesting figure in the life of Mike and Mark Mussina in Montoursville, Pennsylvania, and a guy who was an Oriole at one point and went over and played in Japan. He had wah, as they say. So much like Jim Traber had wah, as well as some cheeseburgers. And Trabes would appreciate that because I love me some Trabes. Tom O'Malley, so Google him because most people don't know who he is, and I want him on the show because I think he's going to be a great guest. We're going to be doing Baltimore Positive, too, and I'm going to have a lot of great guests. So good stuff's going on around here. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.